Go. And we are going live. Here, go. Welcome to Bridges Live, and this is You Be the Judge, and it's hosted by Dr. Paul Dyer, myself, and Marylin Pierre. And I'd like to welcome everyone to our show that we have every Wednesday called You Be the Judge. We like to talk about some things that are legal issues, some of the issues that are affecting our lives,
You Be the Judge, and it's
that
hosted by
affects
Dr. Paul
us
Dyer,
daily, that we don't even know about, and yet it affects us legally with all out ramifications. Marylin, take us through the couple of weeks that we've been talking about with this judiciary process, and we'll get everyone up to speed about what we are doing and what our conversation has been about.
Well, thank you very much for that wonderful introduction, Dr. Dyer, and thank you everybody for joining us. We really appreciate it. We have been talking over the past couple of weeks about 3 different bills. We have been discussing Senate Bill 295, House Bill 0035, and House Bill 0447. All 3 bills have the same thing in common, and the commonality is that they are trying to eliminate our constitutional rights to vote for circuit court judges in contested elections. That's basically what all 3 of them are narrowed down to. And some of them, they want to change the term limits for circuit court judges from 15 years to 12 years or 14 years, but basically it's the same thing. And so over the past couple of weeks, we have talked about the progression of those bills. Last week, there was a hearing. I think yesterday there was a link that was sent out in reference to an article in Maryland Matters that discusses the bills. So I am going to throw it to Judge Barber again, because she has been a wonderful leader in this matter, and she has put us all together and have built this opposition against this bill to a big crescendo, and it is because of her leadership that we are following her and we are in this with her. So I'm going to throw the ball to her so she could follow up with what needs to be done now.
But before Judge Barber talks, I just want to say I also curtail my little curtains and kerchiefs and bows to Judge Barber, because the work you have done in the legal system has just been utterly amazing, and I just don't want you to think that you are just this engine that could, but allow for us to pat you on the back to say, if it wasn't for you paving the way for a lot of other attorneys and judges to do the things you have done and will continue to do, I just want to say thank you for being part of this panel. Thank you.
And I just want to say ditto. And I see that Reverend Morris has joined us, so we're going to be bringing her into the conversation as well once Judge Barber is done.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here, and I am so happy that each one of you that are supportive of what we are doing in terms of bringing opposition to House Bill 35, House Bill 447, and Senate Bill 295 in this 2021 Maryland General Assembly. You are moving the needle because your voice matters. Mm-hmm. And every time another person jumps on board and sends a letter or correspondence to the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee members or anybody, all of the members of the House Judiciary Committee, you are making a difference. You are impacting justice, and you are making your voice known that, hey, we don't agree with this bill, that these bills that you're continuously filing in the state legislature. And this is really the first year where we have vocalized in a very strong way that this is voter suppression. This is a voter suppression tactic. And people who rely on the judicial system, I don't care if it's for something as small as a personal injury case, or if it's a defamation matter, who sits in that judiciary chair is important. Who is judging your case is important. All we have to do is look at the national and international attention that has occurred in the George Floyd killing.
Yeah.
And now we have a judge who's trying to exclude the George Floyd family from appearing in the court by limiting them to one person. How outrageous is that? You know, in my mind, I would immediately look at that judge and how that judge got to the bench and what pathway allowed him to get to the bench, because that is trying to cut the family off from a public proceeding, you know, in a very real way. It sounds like, it gives the bad impression that the judge doesn't want the family to see rulings that would be in favor of the officer.
I know from what this show has done so far, especially from last week itself, we've had over 150 downloads since last week of the show from iHeartRadio. There has been downloads from there. So whoever is watching could be passing this on. So people are taking notice. But what we, as a layman person myself, and I don't even play an attorney on TV, is that we don't know that we had this much power for the judicial courts and how it goes, what it looks like, and what it's supposed to do for us as a community. And I think that education was never told or taught.
Well, when I first practiced law more than 30 years ago, believe it or not.
Ooh, you're telling on yourself.
I was of the mindset on my first day in court that the court system and the judicial system represented justice. I had that ingrained. I says, great. And the other mistake is that I thought the truth will prevail. And people have that mindset if they've never experienced being in the judicial system, that, and it didn't matter to me what judge, because I thought all judges were fair and impartial. But, now let's go bring it forward 30 years later. I know that's not the case. That's just the figment of your imagination, to the extent that, yes, there are fair-minded judges, but all of them are not like that. All of them are not like that at all. And some of them just don't belong there at all. Some of them are racist. They have biases. They believe blacks over whites in testimony just because of the color of their skin. I'll tell it like it is, because I've seen them and I've heard them.
One of the things I think the people who are sitting in the pulpit or sitting in the streets or who are not judges, we thought that you're supposed to follow the letter of the law, and that's what you're judging on, is what is being presented to you, not your personal bias. But I do know from personal experiences that judges who have had losses in their lives from a drunk driver, and they are proceeding in a DUI court, they are very harsh to those people because they lost their son doing a drunk driving accident. So they're going to hit you with all they can because of their personal feelings of it. And we never thought that was possible. Now, we've seen the movies, we've seen the racial movies, we've seen the monkey trial, we've seen it all, but we thought we had moved past that. But you're telling us that we haven't gone anywhere since Thurgood Marshall, argued in the Supreme Court saying that, we're human.
Well, when you think about the Thurgood Marshall era and all of the major advancements that this iconic Supreme Court justice made in the name of justice. Just look how the Brown versus Board of Education decision was received. Mm-hmm. Integration really didn't happen in universities and colleges and schools until almost 10 years or more later, after the Brown decision. And even then, they wouldn't get up off of it. They tried to close the schools in Virginia. They did a whole bunch of stuff to just unwind that decision and see how they could, make it not apply. And, they have other tactics. Oh, no, I'll send my child to a private school. Oh, no, I'll move out of the jurisdiction and go to someplace else. Yes, so you cannot integrate the schools 100%. And we're still dealing with the after effects of the Brown versus Board of Education decision. So, it's rooted in that situation where you have to get to the root of the problem. And the problem has always been the recalcitrance of those in power that try to make the system work their way and their way only. So that's part of the issue here.
Well, one of the things, Marylin, I want to ask you this because she's my attorney mind in my heart, is that I thought how do we fight morality legally?
Well, I've always thought that if somebody believes what they believe, let them believe it. And what I mean by that is, for instance, if you believe whatever it is you want to believe, go ahead and believe that. I've always thought that we put too much emphasis on belief and too little on action. Mm-hmm. For instance, you might believe that certain people are bad. Fine, that's your belief. But it doesn't mean that you have to act on it. It's the acting part for me that has the greatest amount of consequence. And some people say, well, it's not that simple for some people to separate the two. And I think that's true. And I think that's why some people say to me that they can't understand some of the cases that I've done, in the sense that, hey, I've represented people who've been accused of incest. I've represented people who've been accused of statutory rape. Yeah, those cases are things that I definitely don't believe in. I represent them because I believe that they have the right to proper representation, because if we as lawyers start acting like judges and start deciding who's guilty and who's not guilty, then it's only a matter of time until there's nobody there to defend us when we are not guilty. Yeah, but it's the action part that's necessary. Just because you're racist doesn't mean that you have to act on it. And so that's why I think it's important to say that if you're going to believe what you're going to believe it. But you have to follow the law.
Right.
And the law doesn't tell you what to think. The law tells you what you need to do in terms of action.
Now, Marylin, we're in a situation with these bills 0335 and 0447. How do other states see if they're similar or in the same situation? Should they look at who's on the bench and see who is not representing them in an equal fashion? Because that's what's going on in Arundel here in Maryland. That's what's going on in Maryland, period.
Well, I was listening to an interview with Stacey Abrams yesterday, and she talked about how 43 different states are passing laws that are restricting voting rights, because certain people they don't think should be part of the process. Certain people should not be should not be participating in elections, let alone winning elections. And 43 states are doing that. And Maryland is one of them, because that's what Judge Barber talked about when she talked about voter suppression. The three bills that we're discussing, Senate Bill 295, House Bills 35 and 447, all three of them have to do with voter suppression. So Maryland being sold as a progressive state, and we're what was it? We're diehard blue, we're true blue, and so we're not going to do things like that. Yet three bills, and every year these bills have different versions of these bills have been presented in the legislature for the past 40 plus years, is what you say, Judge Barber?
I don't know the length of time that they've been introduced, but it's been consistent and for more than a decade. And I do know, though, that the heart of this issue has to do about taking control. And in addition to that, you have to be mindful of the fact that what they're asking in this bill is major. And once they get what they want, it's just like LEOBR and trying the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights and trying to repeal that thing after it's already been a law since 1974. You're going to have an uphill battle and probably very little opportunity to get this reversed. So that's why it's critically important to stay focused, to stay laser focused on making sure that they don't even get to the stage where they can put this constitutional amendment on a referendum for a vote. Because that's extremely dangerous. You are literally taking away the right of voters to vote for their own circuit court judges. You're just putting it in the hands of unelected commission people appointed by governors and unelected and unaccountable judicial nominating commissions put on the bench whoever they want, whoever they feel like. It's all about them.
I actually think that this is where the Civil War is being fought. The new Civil War is in the courts. It's in the courts. If we don't balance these courts, then you might as well, I don't care who you call one side or what you call the other side. But once it's lopsided, it's over. And it's already difficult. In Maryland, just by talking with you, Judge Barber, and you, Marylin, Maryland incarcerates more black males than any other state.
Can I say something?
Here's something to chew on. After the Rodney King incident that happened many years ago in LA, there was a situation where a 15-year-old black child was shot dead when she was in a store by the owner, and who accused her of stealing, and she was shot dead in the store, and I forgot her name, but it was such a tragic thing that when it came to the sentencing by a white female judge, she sentenced this either it was a Korean or Asian American store owner to a fine of $500, and she shot the person dead. And so some people, yes, that is tragic about the loss of that life. I'm looking at that judge and I'm like, for real, $500. If that person were black, would you really have sentenced it the same way? So, my concern again, when we illuminate and bring to the surface these issues, one of the biggest issues you should be concerned about is sentencing disparity. Mm-hmm. That is all in the hands of a judge, and a circuit court judge at that. And many times, that can be also district court judges, but most of the time for felonies, it's always the circuit court judge. And they're going to decide on whether or not certain evidence gets into the jury. There's literally an actual true story about a judge on the circuit court for Anne Arundel County that refused to allow the jury to hear testimony that during the killing, the killer, who was white, that shot and killed a black man, used the N-word, and that was excluded from the jury.
Wow.
So this is powerful stuff. Powerful stuff.
Yeah, judges have a whole lot of power, and I'm glad that we're discussing that and what we can do to help with that. One person who was very powerful in her testimony in front of the Maryland legislatures last Wednesday was Reverend Morris. And so I wonder if you would like to put in, whatever you want to say to us, Reverend Morris.
Well, I thank you. And I can only say that obviously I'm a non-attorney and I am learning so much. I believe in what you all are doing. I've highly supported. I guess I was the civilian in the room because I was surprised that there were so many questions that came at me. I didn't know quite what to say. I'm glad you had my back.
Why do you think they kept? I thought it was kind of interesting that they kept asking you all those questions.
Reverend Morris, I watched the whole thing. I was watching the whole thing, and I am shaking my head. I'm like, wow, like it's okay, all right.
Well, one thing I wanted to say when you have that afterthought was I hope I didn't give them the impression that, judges didn't have to know the book, because I know they have to know the law, but that doesn't mean that they know how to apply it and all these other things that come into play. But anyway, I have booked 5 Zooms, starting with 1 hour of each other tonight. You are the first. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to stop by and support. And again, this is an education for me. I'm learning so much from my dear friends and colleagues, especially Judge Claudia. She's still my judge, Judge Claudia Barber. Always learning experience from all of you as I listen to you, and just let me know what I can do to help. But going back down there and testifying, I said, I know why people aren't like. I was like, oh my God, it was a hot seat. But I'm glad that I didn't, make any mistakes to harm the effort. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You did an absolutely great job. And when they kept on pounding those questions on you, you just took it with grace and finesse. You were absolutely wonderful. You were elegant and eloquent. Yeah, you showed them. So thank you very, very much. Mithun, I said you were going to be next, so we're ready for your question now.
Okay, good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Dr. Dyer and Ms. Marylin, and thanks a lot, Judge Barber. We really appreciate your guidance on this. So I have 2 things I wanted to say. Number one, I'm not going to say any names and all. I have experienced where in the court, I'm not an attorney, but I've seen in the court where judges, law firm was campaign manager, and the judges were cousin to the law firm principal, where judges never provided any disclosures to the pro se plaintiff like me. Now, we don't know the law very well. What can we do in that situation where we see that there has been something wrong? Number one. Number two, I was born in India. In Asia, a lot of countries are there. This corruption is there. We grew up with this. But after coming to US, being here for almost 2 decades, we thought this is a wonderful country where Constitution, Bill of Rights, everything holds good. But I will give you one small example. It was in 2000, 5-6 years back, I was crossing near the circuit court and district court. So I saw one white lady did a jaywalking just in front of the sheriff and all those things. So I was crossing on the zebra crossing, like cross street. So I immediately say, ma'am, please don't do that. There are a lot of cops and sheriff. If they catch you, they can give you a fine. She told me, no, don't worry. I will not get a fine because I'm white. I was like shocked. I said, but what if it goes to the judge?
She's honest though. She's right.
I know. No. If you hear the whole story, your jaw will drop. Then what she said was, how about it goes to the court, district court and circuit court and all? She told me judges knows that too. And then I asked who you are. She said, I'm a public defender. This is, I can't believe my ears and eyes. I'm like, wow. Thank you.
Well, thank you for sharing that story with us. And well, some people know that they're privileged and they recognize it. Some people know that they're privileged and they refuse to recognize it. So at least she recognized that she did have that privilege.
Well, I'd like to share that I think Marylin Matters did an excellent piece on what the legislation is about. But Marylin Matters also, I think it was Marylin Matters that did a piece when I ran for office. And one of the things they brought up is the fact that when you look at the circuit court and look at the composition of the judiciary, you want to see public defenders on there. Mm-hmm. Many times you see a lot of state's attorneys that turn judges, but you want to see public defenders on there, and they should be there because they balance the court, and their experiences are going to be very different than prosecutor experiences are. And that message that Mr. Mitham just brought to our attention about the fact that she was a public defender, that resonated with me because it sounded like she's been in the system and she knows what she's talking about, and she knows the system and she's seen things happen in the system where, maybe, she could speak more vividly and candidly about sentencing disparity.
Well, Judge Barber,
on here.
Well, let me ask you this, Judge Barber, and this is like a question that's thrown out to you. When we talk about equality, equal rights, we're mostly talking about people who are forgotten about or pushed to the side. It's actually only the people who have the privilege who has to speak up to say this isn't fair. Because for us, they're just saying you're just complaining. That's all they'll minimize and marginalize you to say you are just complaining. It's only people who are not ever affected, who say, this is not right. That's when they listen.
I can't disagree with that at all. There are people that don't sign on to or understand the legislation that we're discussing because it doesn't impact. They don't care. The system works for them and they're okay with things in the status quo. But people who are impacted by that system and they have been before judges and they see how the judges react and their implicit biases. They are the ones that are paying attention or that have had bad experiences in the judiciary. They are the ones that have a lot to say about how they were impacted.
Mm-hmm. That is so true. And I know that Dr. Butler, your boy, has been waiting patiently to ask a question or make a statement.
I can send out this. Thank you so much. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, wonderful.
Although you do have some background noise, I don't know if you want to
let me lower that. I'm on 2 Zooms. I know that sounds crazy, but I have I do my youth program, so I have my our Gatbuster Cavaliers Toastmasters Club on as we're doing this workshop. And so it's funny. That's why I've missed every Wednesday, because every Wednesday I work with my young people and help them to become the best speakers and communicators and teach them team building skills as well as parliamentary procedures. And they take real life issues like this and talk about them. So I'm going to invite them to this show on one of the Wednesdays so they can be part of the dialogue to see what is going on and be more proactive. But I just wanted to just make a comment and see, because, I said Judge Barber was saying before about what happened in California and that was a Korean woman, and that judge literally said, you have done time served. And she shot her, not only just shot and killed her, but she shot her and killed her in the back of the head when she was turning around to get her money. So that happened right around the Rodney King time. And of course, we know all the riots came afterwards. And so that's why people wondered why there's so much tension in California between Koreans and Blacks. That caused a wedge that is still prevalent today. Very, very prevalent today. But I wanted to ask, has anyone seen Say Her Name yet?
Yes.
Because if everyone, and I'm not sure if you talked about that, because that there shows again, and we have to really talk about what's happening right now. Because right now, within that judgment, they didn't even allow them to bring in murder charges. They only allowed them to talk about, and I did not know until I saw say her name the other night. It just came out. I recommend for all the listeners out there, I recommend everyone on this call tonight to please watch Say Her Name, because it shows you what really happened in those hours of that poor woman, Breonna Taylor. And I'll say her name, Breonna Taylor, laid there and bled out while they took another police officer who possibly got shot by friendly fire to the hospital for treatment. That woman was allowed to bleed out on the floor. Her parents did not know what was going on during that whole horrible time. And then they covered it up.
Right.
And then when it goes to court, they didn't even allow them to be prosecuted or even bring up the idea of murder. The only charge that they were able to deliberate were the charges of endangerment to the neighbor.
That's it.
So that in itself, we're talking about day to common day now. This is what we really have to. We really have to get involved in this and make change and keep our feet to the fire. So that's all I want to say. And thank you for the opportunity.
But you bring it up again. It goes back to the power of the judiciary issue. It keeps if a judge says, "I don't want to hear it. Don't bring it into my court." An attorney really cannot say it, even if he says he's going to be held in contempt. So there's these issues. There is a movie on called the Seven. The Seven. It's the Chicago Seven. That judge, and you want to hear what judges are like now in Maryland. Watch that movie. That judge was whoa. He was so obstinate, and he was like, "I don't care what your right is. I'm going to hear this." And he did the same thing you talked about, where he removed the AG who was under Lyndon Johnson. He testified, but he removed the jury to not hear his testimony, and saying that they didn't believe that they were going to be rioting and they didn't blame anyone. So this was brought after this AG was out and the new administration was in. It's crazy what a judge can do, and we're allowing them to now stop us for voting on it. So again, voter suppression, control the courts, control the masses. This is exactly what they're doing.
Exactly, and I'm glad that everyone that's participating in this conversation tonight can dialogue and bring to the surface what the real problems are, because it's not something that's brought to the surface every day in the newspaper. Right. And many times, the electorate is fooled by putting in the legislature people who will support this type of legislation and co-sponsor this type of legislation. And believe it or not, it really is the citizens and the voters who made an impact in the last judicial election in 2020 that showed many of these legislators, hey, we are paying attention and we know who we want on the bench. In Howard County, they said that they unseated the sitting judge. In Charles County, they unseated the sitting judge, and they just unseated all over the place the sitting judges in Prince George's County. So these counties are actually indicative of and I refuse to believe every single voter is ignorant. No, I don't believe that at all. They know exactly what's going on, especially in Prince George's County. You know exactly what's going on. As we decide who our judges are, and that's that. So the same thing with other counties. Charles County, and the unseating of sitting judge there. So, that's very, very telling. So then, legislators should be in a position where they dial it back and they stop signing on to these co-sponsoring legislation that doesn't really represent what the electorate wants.
I actually think we should go after the people who are sponsoring this bill to unseat them.
I agree.
I mean, I hope people think that's part of our plan, because that is the plan, is one, stop these bills, stop this in the Senate and in the House, stop them. But whoever sponsored, co-sponsored, and whoever is shaking their head on the committee, we need to get them out.
Yeah, I agree, because I really don't think that they're bringing these bills in good faith.
No.
What I mean by that is Senator John Cardin, who bought Delegate John Cardin, who bought the bill, House Bill 0035, when I expressed the experience that I had in front of the governor's trial court's judicial nominating committee. He said, "Oh yes, I understand." And we had somebody who went through the process, and we couldn't believe that he got appointed either, and we knew he got appointed because of his network and the connections that he had, which is why we then fought against him to get elected. And I said, well, if you have already been through that, why would you make it even more difficult to fight against somebody that you don't believe should have been appointed? So I don't think that they're doing it in good faith. I think that
someone's pulling their strings
because somebody's backing them. Probably somebody is supporting their campaign or have made, I don't know what sort of promise. And that's why they're doing that. And me, Tony, I understand what you're saying, because I myself from Haiti, I know that when somebody wants to bribe somebody, they would, bring them a bag full of crumpled bills and things like that and say, here's the money, do this for me, I'll give you that. But over here, what I've noticed is they don't bring a bag of crumpled bills. They say something like, well, I will hire your child. I will give you, an advance so you could write a book. Wink, wink, nod, nod. The book is not going to be written, but yet you could do whatever you want with the advance. So it's the same thing, but it's just done in a different way. One might say a more elegant way, but the result is still the same.
It's too political. It's just too political, number one. Now, I don't know if you've had the same experience, but Marylin, whenever you appear before the Judicial Nominating Commission, do they ever ask you a question about sentencing disparity, which is, to me, a relevant question that should be asked of every applicant?
Well, whenever I've been in front of them, I don't know why they find me so offensive, but whenever I've been in front of them, it's always been an attack. I'm sitting there feeling like I'm being cross-examined. And I remember one day in particular where I was rushing to get to my appointment, because it's a 15-minute appointment. And if you're late, that's part of your 15 minutes. So I was like, oh my God, I need to rush. So I get there and I waited and I waited. I'm looking at my watch, and the person who was in there for over an hour, and there were like laughter coming out of the room the whole time. And I'm sitting there going, I killed myself getting here so I could be on time. And yet, somebody's getting into my time. And so when the person who left, everybody just zoomed out of the room, because they all said that they had to use the bathroom. So they had to use the bathroom. The person who was out came out, and it just so happened that there was another judge who was passing by at the time. And I'm sitting there minding my own business, waiting, for them to convene back in again so I could go in to do my interview. So the candidate for judge and the judge were talking, and the judge said to the candidate for judge, oh, what did they ask you when you were in there? And so he went about saying, oh yeah, they asked me this, asked me that. We talked about this, we talked about that. And the judge said, oh, when I was interviewing with them, which was not this particular group, but another group. But when I was interviewing with the trial court's Judicial Nominating Committee, The only question they asked me was what was my favorite book, and I was like, oh, I've never been asked that question, because I love to read. I would love to be asked that question. I would love to, not be cross-examined about, are you sure you did this? Are you sure you can do that? Are you sure? It's always a put down. The sort of questions that I get, it's never a question to build me up. So I already know that I don't have any friends in there. They make that very, very clear. So I don't know if you want to talk about your experience.
It's hold on. As we keep the pressure on, as we still want to write letters. We still want people to write letters to the legislature. We still want people to keep an eye on the bill 0035 and 0447 and Senate Bill 295. We want people to still pay attention to your own county, your own state. Look in the state, because we're looking for references to say, I just looked at my county in whatever state you're in, and it doesn't look like me. There's a lot of this on the court. I would like to have that information from what you say, the ground level, sent back to me, inbox me and say, I've looked at my county, I've looked at my state, and it is a disparaging of what it represents people, because I think we got to use the people to get back the information we so want to see.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Judge Barber. Just that just reminds me, Dr. Dyer. I think you misquoted something, and I want to make sure we get the proper information out there. Maryland incarcerates a higher percentage of its young Black males than any other state in the country. So number-wise, it's not the highest number, because we don't have the population, but it's the highest percentage. And it's also the highest percentage between total population of Black people, which is around 30%, and total prison population, which is 70%. So 40% more in terms of prison population of being Black as opposed to the total population, which the Justice Policy Institute, that's who has those numbers. Say is the greatest disparity than any other state. And that's why Maryland is so problematic. So you're not going to see it in terms of incarceration. You're not going to see Maryland incarcerates 1,000 and, the next state incarcerates 975. Right. But it's the highest percentage.
Well, could we think about a bill for next year that would say the percentage of each race of judge should represent the population of Maryland? So if the population is, no, we can't say that?
No, because what we have talked about before is it's not so much the race of the person, right. Because what the people have learned who want to play those games is they will put a Black person there. They will put a woman there. They will put, an Asian person there. Whatever person you want them to put there, they will put that person there. But that person
may not be for us.
Yeah, may not be for us. Well, it's probably not going to be for us, and that's why that person is chosen. So let's look at the Supreme Court. You put, Thurgood Marshall retires, and you put Clarence Thomas on there. Ruth Bader Ginsburg dies, and you put Amy Coney Barrett in there. Total changes. Right. But, you have a Black man for a Black man and a white woman for a white woman. So that's why we don't want to say, hey, we want X percentage of this.
Right. That makes sense. Well, I see that Yvette has put in here, please watch Amend, narrated by Will Smith. This is Will Smith of Maryland?
No, the actor.
The actor.
Okay, good. Mm-hmm. Because Will Smith and Jeff Waldstreicher, who is my senator from District 18, just killed the Maine Police Accountability Bill, LEOBR. Yeah. They killed it. We're stuck, unless the House passes a very strict police accountability bill, we're stuck with that awful bill, that law forever.
Well, they really don't want police to have accountability. They just
that's
don't.
A big issue.
It's a huge issue.
That is a big issue.
Yeah, because it's tough to put the police department on trial in the court. You can put a person on court, but they represent the police department, and that's not something that they want to be looked at. It's a tough bill.
Yeah, but
and Mike, I see that you're taking some bites. So, but sorry, if you could hold on in between bites and tell us a little bit about the rally, because you were at the rally on.
Yes, I was at the rally.
I'm sorry.
Okay, I live in Kensington, and Will.
Oh, you were there too, Molly?
Excuse me?
You were at the rally as well?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you two could talk about it then.
Okay, I live in Kensington, and Jeff Waldstreicher lives in Kensington. That's why he's my state senator from 18. Will Smith lives in Silver Spring. So the rally started at Kensington Parkwood Elementary School Saturday afternoon, and we heard speeches from 5 Black people whose relatives were killed by Montgomery County police officers. But nothing happened to the police officers. So, of course, these people are furious. And they told us a lot about how unjust this was and how Montgomery County keeps doing it. I mean, this is 5 in the last 10 years or something like that. So then we drove by Jeff's house, which is on Parkwood Avenue in Kensington, and then we drove to Will Smith's house in Silver Spring, and there were probably 75 people there, I'd say, and most of them were white because Kensington is mostly white. And then I met somebody there who was one of the white speakers who was really appalled by this killing Leo Bior, and I said, I'm appalled by this too, and she said, I've really had it with Jeff Waldstreicher. I want to find someone who will run against him.
Oh, we can find somebody to run against him. That's easy.
Okay, well, then she emailed me this week and said, we're having on Friday, we're going to leaflet Jeff Waldstreicher's neighborhood. Can you come? And I said, well, I can't come at the time you want. I have a client then, but I'll come later. And then I told her about somebody who I met 2 years ago when we had an election, a very nice, smart woman named Leslie Milano from District 18, who has never held elective office. Do you know her, Marylin?
Yes, she ran for delegate back in 2018.
Yes, in District 18. That's how I met her, because she's very good. She's very smart. She's really knowledgeable. She's very nice. So she would be my choice. So I emailed this woman who I met and said, yeah, can you think about her? And then I got an email from the ACLU and the Silver Spring Justice Coalition today saying, come to this leafleting opportunity on Friday. And, they're doing something. They're not going to take this lying down. I hope that Jeff Waldstreicher gets kicked out because of this.
Well, there was a question that was raised in the chat. What efforts have been made to change the judicial selection process? It seems that that's the basis of the problem. Mm-hmm. And the judicial selection process is really something that is defined more specifically in an executive order. And governors issue and implement and re-implement these executive orders that establish the Judicial Nominating Commission, and they further identify, how the Judicial Nominating Commissions are composed, and they further define, how you shortlist applicants and which. There's an appellate judicial nominating commission and a trial court judicial nominating commissions, and all that's set out in the executive orders. And the executive order is often written such that the people who are shortlisted are, quote unquote, the best. And from my perspective, those are just words on paper. They're not getting the best. They are getting the favorite. They are getting the one that's well connected and politically correct. But it's not based on merit. It's just not. It's easily proven if you look at the backgrounds of the candidates that, how can you take somebody who has 30 years of legal experience and then shortlist somebody who has 5.
Right.
So it just doesn't make any sense. So it's that executive order, and it really takes a governor with backbone to change an executive order and implement something different. That's how it also can change. But it takes the right governor that has the right and fair mindset to do something different.
Well, it's not going to be Hogan.
No.
Well, it's not going to be Hogan, but in 2 years we get to choose another one. So
We get to choose one.
And Hogan's going to run for president.
Well, since they're going to be vying for our votes in a couple of months, I suggest that be a question that's at the top of our list, because that question usually doesn't get asked.
No, it doesn't. Not in the campaign trail. And it should be something that should be brought to the forefront. But we shouldn't, we should definitely know and understand if these candidates for governor are beholden to this existing judicial nominating system process, which has already proven to be something that is just nothing but state-sponsored discrimination. Just call it by what it is. And it is. It practices exclusion. It excludes Hispanics. It excludes Native Americans. It excludes Asian Americans from ever being appointed to the bench. And they have history longer than African Americans because it's been 300 and some years for some of these ethnic, lawyers with these ethnic backgrounds to even have a shot. So, no, they're not trying. They really aren't trying.
And also, I want to make this point, and then I want to go back to you, Mike, because I know we want to discuss the rally a little bit more. And also, when you look at the relationship of the people who have been appointed to certain people, like, for instance, in Prince George's County, you had Bruce Beriano's son, who was appointed to the district court and then the circuit court, who lost. He was one of the people who lost in the election in the primary. And I don't know if you guys know that Bruce Beriano is the #1 lobbyist in the state of Maryland. So you had his son, being appointed to that. You have Mike Miller's son, who was appointed a couple of years ago to the district court. And everyone was like, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say everyone. A lot of people were concerned about that appointment.
He wasn't shortlisted the first time. He was not shortlisted, but he got on anyway.
And also,
they made it happen.
He spent some years at I think he spent maybe about 3 years at a law firm, and then a couple of years as a workers' comp commissioner. And people were saying that's not enough for a judge, but yet he was Mike Miller's son, so he's in the district court. Chances are they're not going to put him in the circuit court because he would probably face he would probably have some opposition in the circuit court, and that person probably would be able to beat him. And that's why we need the circuit court to remain a place where there could be contested elections.
We don't have much time left, so Marylin, does someone have a comment that you want?
Mike would like to say something about.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
I didn't know that Molly was there, so thanks. I did write about my experience. I don't know if you had time to circulate that piece that I wrote. It's going around Tacoma Park.
Can you send it to us?
It's in Maryland's hands.
Okay, I have it. I'll send it.
Are you allowed to send it?
Visit today?
Because it's of a political nature, is that going to get you into any trouble?
Well, you're the one sending it. I'm not doing it. I'm just sending it to people because you asked me.
You probably ought to get the latest. There have been some changes since I sent it to you.
Oh, okay. So send it to me with the changes, and then I'll.
Well, yeah, call me tomorrow and we could update it.
Okay.
To several other people since I showed up at the rally, but I was not involved in the organizing. I was just there to be a supporter. And, the problem with politics is and I think you know this, most of you, especially Judge Barber and Marylin, Pierre. This is an insiders, outsiders game, a game. Mm-hmm. And your trust is going to be betrayed It's going to be betrayed because it's not fair. It's racist. It's based on money. It's based on favoritism. It's based on racism. There's no fairness to this system. And Jamie Raskin's quote, I think, is one he keeps on repeating, which is, when you're running, it's a cesspool. When you get elected, it's a jacuzzi. There's something very, very true about that. Now, I have a close friend, Dana Dyer, who I don't know what she spent, but it does take a lot of money to get elected in any district. Mm-hmm. I suspect she spent, I'm not going to guesstimate it, but a lot of money. So one who runs against Jeff Wallstreicher has to be prepared to spend a lot of money. Dana ran 3 times and lost each time. And I think one of the reasons, anyway, was that she was a transgendered woman, and that did not help with the genteel voters in District 18. A lot of us came out to support her from progressive neighbors, but it wasn't enough. And I guess that's.
But I think 2022 might be her year, because I love that she said,
but she's not
put a doctor in the house. I still remember that as part of her, tagline. So she's an MD, so it's like
a call from you might help, but I think she's sworn off politics.
No, the good ones.
Well, we'll have to get her back on.
But I do want to say one more thing, and that is, I hear these comments you're making. I came from Brooklyn, New York, from a housing project, and I came here the weekend of Martin Luther King's March on Washington, which I, despite being warned by my parents not to go to, I snuck away and went to it. And the next day was graduate school, PhD program. And once I realized the reality of segregation, it was too painful. I could not finish the PhD. I kept on in '64 going to the South to do voter registration. The Freedom House I was supposed to show up in Tupelo, Mississippi, was burnt down by the Klan the week before I came.
Wow.
I worked on voter registration in North Carolina in '64. But the only solace I have is this. In 1964, when I went to the South, I learned one important thing. This is my solace. And that is, as a Jew, I was not considered a white person. And I don't know. Wow. I don't know if any of you are from the South, South Carolina, Mississippi. Wow. That gives me solace to a lot of them. That is the racists and the segregationists. We are a betrayal to the white race. Mm-hmm. This probably a lot of you have shock on your face.
No, I knew that. And I knew that by having lots of Jewish friends that I've grown up. And I'm also from New York, too. But
I'm not saying Jews are not free of prejudice. I'm not defending Jews. You got as many, that Judge Hoffman, Abby Hoffman was Jewish. She was a friend of mine. But Judge Hoffman was also a Jew. And so you don't have a solid block here of people who all think the same way or meet as a cabal. I'm not saying anything like that. But I am proud to, by at least the segregationists, the neo-Nazis, and the white nationalists, considered not to be white. So a badge of honor for me. Hearing you talk.
Hold on. In the North, you're considered white.
It depends on who you are in the North. Because not everyone in the North will consider. So, and that's where we go with, it's not so much the color, it's the person. So, remember, you can always share this show, and you can catch it on iHeartRadio, all your Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcast station. It's called Bridges Lives with Dr. Paul Dyer and Marylin Pierre, You Be the Judge. So you can pick up this podcast, you can share it with your friends, like it, and share it, YouTube channel, and all that stuff. We are here every week, Wednesday at 6 p.m. You Be the Judge. Marylin, anything else you want to say before we cut out? Because 7's our deadline. We've been told. We've been told by the judge. Here comes the judge. And the names will be not named about who told us to cut it short. But Marylin, anything else for us to say?
Oh, I think we did a great job. I look forward to seeing all of you next week as we talk about some exciting new things and revamp some old issues that we have. Please welcome us. Please join us again next week.
Thank you, everyone, and everyone have a blessed and beautiful night. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Good night.